So I'm with Pete Ashby today of Team 2030, and Team 2030 has some very radical ideas about hybrid working. Pete, who is Team 2030?
Thank you, Michael, and it's terrific to join you today. It's funny, isn't it? Because you call them very radical, but now, I think now we're looking at just coming out of COVID. I sort of feel what we regarded as radical pre-COVID now is simply that which many people accept as the new reality. Team 2030, we are looking at the nature of teams by the end of this decade in 2030. Many of us have been expecting that the way teams work will change very significantly with all the, move towards more agile working patterns, the need for greater flexibility anyway before the pandemic. What the pandemic has done is in 2021, it's probably moved us forward to where we would have been by 2025, 2026. We have in our small organization, a network of 52 chief execs and leaders from across different sectors. They're people I and my business partner, Krisha, we know very well. I ran a leadership program in Windsor Castle in a place called St. George's House, where most of them are leadership fellows, and we had a group of 250 leadership fellows. So we're very lucky to be plugged into all sorts of different leadership networks and sectors. And it's been fascinating watching the way all our thinking has moved on during the pandemic. So to us, the watchword is, this is a once in a lifetime reset in the employer-employee relationship. Some people see it, embrace it, want to get out of the game. Others are in denial, partly because of the nature of trauma. They're still trying to cope with the notion of transitioning out of this fear-based culture to one where they can regain control. And so we hope some will get ahead of the game, try new ways of working, and encourage those who are still fairly traumatized to play a bit of catch up at a later stage.
So you don't think that when the dust has settled on COVID and it becomes a memory, what's our biggest legacy of the Black Death, Ring a Ring of Roses, the nursery rhyme song, but yeah. I don't know, we forgot about it, we moved on. Do you not think that within a few years' time, everything will be back to what it was like before the pandemic?
Well, I think any good entrepreneur, any good chief executive should say to themselves, we could be here again. There could be another variant, there could be something else. And what we have learned this time is we are vulnerable unless we have the capacity for remote working, for home-based working. So it seems to me this is now commonplace. We all know we have to, whatever government or any of the World Health Organization might say, this risk, and indeed the WHO acknowledge this very openly, this risk is with us, for good, for the duration. So I think there is a sense now of heightened shared vulnerability. And we recognize some individuals are prepared to put themselves out and take on new working practices and go for it and indeed be more productive and perform better at home. Other individuals have resisted, but on the whole, I think across all sectors, employers say all of us responded remarkably well to this enforced home working model, to having to make changes when we were told we had no choice. And what I think is quite delicious, because our work is around empowerment, it's in our moments of almost collective disempowerment that we found another ability to re-empower ourselves. So, those managers, for example, who were really fearful that their people out of sight would not perform and were told to check in rather than check on and would be a bit cynical and raise their eyebrows, they were the first to say 3 or 6 months into the pandemic, gosh, actually, I'm amazed, look at these figures. My people are performing better. They are going for it. I have developed a mindset that has become, it just reproduced itself, that I must be there because they can't be trusted to be there without me. Now the world's got to change. So I think many people are up for change, and the employers who will be the high performers in the late 20s, those who are now embracing it, are looking for a very different relationship with their key people.
So I saw an article in The Economist recently, and it had the headline, if you want your boss to be supportive of you from working from home, don't choose to work from home on Thursdays and Fridays or Friday and Monday, because then they'll get suspicious. Is that right, do you think? Or do you think we need to be a little bit more adult about it than that?
I think that's a bit old mode. because people know wherever they are working from, they'll be on screen with key colleagues. We now view performance much more in terms of output and product. And I think the whole system for senior staff is much less time-based than it was before. And remember, many people who spend most of their week working from home have been doing significantly longer hours and been setting themselves higher standards. So that's why I think the good employers will be looking at how they can change the nature of those relationships. I think the problem is, and our specialism is around team working, those teams that don't create time to be together in the same physical space to have in-person meetings, I think they will continue to suffer in their relationships within the team. I think most of us, to feel loyalty towards other people, to put ourselves out for other people, to want them to succeed, at some level, we need, I think, in a team of 7 or 8, to be around them for some of the time. It doesn't need anything like the time we used to give each other, but I think we need some time together. And the team leader needs to work at making that quality time. And in our view, the organizations that will actually really experience hits in performance will be the ones that post-pandemic think you can simply keep going without reinvesting in that in-person time for the team. And they won't bond in the way those who are now really thoughtfully planning that team collaborative time will rebond. And I think they'll slip behind. So we're saying you could do 4 days a week easily remote working, but if that day 5 is quality, creative, supportive, a lot of it informal, but being there for each other, that could be more productive than the old model, which is 4 or 5 days in the office before with the very occasional day off from home. So it's all now flowing through in all sorts of different patterns. But we think at some level, most teams where they can be together physically need to create a new type of space where they can actually share stuff, because interpersonal stuff, all the behavioral issues where we always trip up over each other. What most people now say is you can't do it on Zoom, you can't do it on Teams, you need to do it in the same space. And you need a team leader who asks the question, who says, come on guys, there's baggage in the room, let's sort it out before we leave the room. You cannot do that online.
Okay, so you seem to be arguing in favour of a hybrid working, of a hybrid model then?
I think for the vast majority, 80–85%, there'll be a high element of control about how they create their particular mix. The difficulty is if you have a team where typically there's 3 days or maybe 2 days in the office, whatever it might be, a some level where they need to plan to collide with each other. What I worry about are teams where some are in the room, some are online, and you get that really messy mix. And that's almost the worst of both worlds. I think sometimes everyone online is better than some in the room. And sometimes everyone in the room is absolutely better if it's not transactional, if it's interpersonal. Transactional stuff on the whole, you can do online, get on with it, make it brisk, be businesslike, sort it out, watch the clock, move on. It's when you're grappling with something, someone's finding it tough, they say, hey guys, I need some help with this. I'm in a bit of a hole. It hasn't worked out. I'm a bit worried about it. You really only make yourself vulnerable like that with a few other people when you share the same physical space. I mean, people on the whole, they do not do that on Zoom or Teams calls. They go behind their mask. It's quite guarded, quite defended, and it's low risk. And that is one of the things, I think, Michael, which is really important, which is the top performing teams, they build trust in each other at high levels because they take risks with each other and they feed on the risk taking to build the trust to drive performance.
Does that mean though, that they necessarily have to be in an office? They could meet, they could do these sessions anywhere?
No. Absolutely, anywhere. Sometimes much better out of an office. I mean, I worked with top teams for 30 plus years, because that's been my main sort of day job for so long. And often the times when they say, oh, you can't say that, we danced around this one for years and years. This is the elephant in the room, Pete. If you're going to call it, and you've got to call it, it's often best if it's off-site, somewhere neutral space, not in the office. But so I would say, in a sense, that notion of the office needs to go. Because it is collaborative space. It's designed with as few computers as possible in the room. And I think everyone is in on it. But I think, and there's a principle underpinning this, if I can draw this out now, which is the empowerment needs to sit with the individual rather than with the team. I think, and this is why we're looking at teams in 2030, many leaders, many chief executives, in our view, have over-invested decision-making in their teams, and that has blocked individual accountability. So what we're working on with some teams now is to say, give accountability back to the individual. Say to, say, the chief operating officer, right, that sits with you. Michael, if you're the coup, your name is by then. You're the lead person. If you screw up on it, it's your screw up. You succeed on it, your success. We are here to support you on it. So you come to us very clear, this is yours. And you say, look, Pete and others, I want your help on this. Move me on it. Or this is great, it could be even better. We are there for you. But the problem is, somehow over the years, over the decades, we've collectivized too many of these decisions. They're owned by the whole team. So what do you think should really be yours? We've all got a bloody stake in. We want a bit of it as ours. So you think, oh gosh, to change it, I've got to get the whole team to change it. I might be wrong. So maybe keep my head down. You become a bit risk averse. You don't go back to the team. So really, we've got to take decisions off teams to give back to teams that support function and that challenge function that really is the richest part of team life. When I can say to you, look, Michael, I know that's your responsibility, it's down to you, but have you thought about so-and-so? And you know, in responding to my challenge, it's up to you. I'm not trying to take it off you. I'm not trying to make it a Michael Pete decision or a team decision. I'm saying, look, this is your bag, your baby, your call. But have you thought about this? And I'm a peer. And you say, great point, Pete. And on your watch, you as the CFO, that sheet there, the only thing we can grow by there to compensate the growing deficit in that area of work. So what we think is the key to empowerment in the future is we see the role of the individual and we move much more to a self-leadership model. Everyone from the top of the organization says, I want to be part of a team that backs me in doing my job better, and I reciprocate. A small number of decisions will have to be owned by the team, but a very small number. And I will be accountable for my decisions. And I think the key thing then for a chief executive is if any of us say, that's not going so well, I acknowledge it, I bring it to the team, great, terrific. There's an underperformance issue, but we're out there about it, there's candor. If we conceal underperformance and there's lack of candor, then I think we've got to be tough in the accountability. And people at the top level need to experience the negative consequence. They will dish out to middle managers, but self-and top teams won't take themselves because they hide behind a team accountability that is never real.
So you see a switch from the traditional manager role to being more like a coach. So does that mean we're going to have lots of Jose Mourinhos, I suppose, or perhaps not, because I don't know that he is a particularly, maybe he's more of a boss, perhaps, I don't know.
Well, I'm more of a Southgate fan and follower through and through at the moment. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, some coaches, you know, everyone has their own coaching style. And I think it's important for people to be good coaches. They find their own style. And some will have a slightly directed, upfront, in-your-face style. And here again, this is always so interesting, you know, because when we work with teams, some of those chief execs with top teams who can be prone to being a bit in your face, a bit sloppy, a bit angry, a bit high pressure, are often trusted more by their team than the more, you know, choose your words carefully, a bit more nuanced, a centrist leader. And people say, I'm not quite sure where I stand with them. I'm not quite sure what they want. So I think the thing about a coach is a coach finds a way of leading that is seen to be authentic. And for some, it's more in your face, and others, it's more coaching from behind. But they know, and the team know, that they're all in the one boat. And the coach cannot. There are many managers. Well, I know from work with chief execs, the chief exec will say to the manager, team's not doing very well. You've got to give them a bit more of a kicking, a bit more of a prodding. Sort your team out. They're not doing very good. And I think, no. The issue is, what is it about how you are leading the team, how you are coaching your team, that means they haven't got to where you thought and they thought they were going to get? That's the question you want the chief executive to ask their coach. So I think somehow you create the one boat model for the team, and the coach is in that boat with everyone else in the team. And if the team don't score then the coach is sent off to another football match. And I think that should be the deal. So, and the lovely thing is then, if you're encouraging me to do something, I'm thinking, blimey, it's in Michael's interest to get it right. There's no great power play on this one because he and I are ultimately, you know, if I don't achieve what he wants me to achieve, he loses as well as I do. I think it's we'll test it out. As I say, all these things, people are up for testing out post-COVID in a way there wasn't quite the appetite before. Because we know, and this to me is part of the way in, people who are good can now vote with their feet in the way they didn't quite think they could do before. You know, so many hundreds of thousands of knowledge workers in the UK are fundamentally rethinking their lives, their ways of working, their ways of living after COVID. We are going through such a time, you know, really profound. What's it all about? What do I want for my work relationship? I think so many of us, we want employers who see us and our family needs and our wider belief systems and the sort of person we are. So I think there's terrific energy now, which has been unleashed. And some businesses, they are more open to more experimentation than they have been for many years. And that must be a very, very good outcome from the, you know, the horrors of COVID. People who are good can now vote with their feet in the way they didn't quite think they could do before. You know, so many hundreds of thousands of knowledge workers in the UK are fundamentally rethinking their lives, their ways of working, their ways of living after COVID. We are going through such a time, you know, really profound. What's it all about? What do I want for my work relationship?
So you mentioned earlier how meetings, they should either be all online or all offline, and they don't necessarily work if some people are online in a Zoom call, but there are maybe 3 or 4 people in an office together. And that made me think, can some people feel they're losing out? They're working from home, everybody else is in the office, and they're missing out on the opportunities for promotion and career advancement, etc. I mean, how do we overcome that problem?
So far, to be honest, Michael, I think the problem's gone the other way. Some people have traipsed into the office and found they're in on the meeting and 3 or 4 other people on the meeting still working from home. They're thinking, why the hell did I spend an hour and a half traveling to the office? And they stayed at home this morning. Now, I think there will be times when people have to dial into the meeting. So you can't have everyone there in the same room. I just think there's something about teams, which is we need to feel at times we put ourselves out for other people. I think the slight problem with the individualization of some working patterns is some people have thought, I don't need to inconvenience myself for others in my team. And that's when I think other people who can be quite sensitive to these messages can overinterpret something and feel a bit of a snub that wasn't intended as a snub by the person who thought, what the hell, I'm going to work at home all week. Why should I bother if they want to be in the office? And that's where I think the point about the new leadership challenge is I think leaders are required to be that bit more empathic than they had to be before the pandemic. Because we have all been traumatized in all sorts of different ways. And there are some people who now, I think it will take months to overcome the fear of leaving home. They might want to do it once a week, maybe twice a week, but each time they leave home for quite some considerable time, they will find it a bit of an ordeal. And those of us who don't feel that need to remind ourselves of that and to try and make whatever adjustment we can make. So that's why I think at a simple human level, we will need to be generous spirited towards each other more so than we had to before. And I think everyone's got to take their own decision. And I think too often we try and protect people against themselves. And I think we shouldn't do that. We should just accommodate the fact that we are all handle trauma very differently. For some people, July the 19th is over, finito, that's it, gone. Other people, this will go on for years and years in our heads. And in a sense, some people will never, ever get over COVID fully. And we've got to accept all these different responses. And I think the art of leadership is that true diversity of response. And somehow we don't standardize our model. Everyone, we need to try and take them with us. It's a bigger boat, it's a broader boat, but ultimately we want them to feel empowered And what I love about empowerment at the individual level is it means different things for different people. Hooray to that. Hooray to that. And that's why I love the notion of coaching leadership, because a good coach fixes on that individual and says, you have potential, your unique potential. My job is to help you release that for our business. I think there's no higher form of leadership than coaching leadership.
It's the year 2030. How will things be different?
Well, I think that in some ways teams will be almost less important in our lives, I think, because as individuals, we as individual employees, as individual leaders, we have a keener sense of our own journey. I'm unsure about the phrase. I think it's a good phrase for 2030. Our sense of leadership journey will be more distinctive. More of us will work for more than one employer. I think that employer commitment to well-being will be that much more commonplace and much better established than it was pre-COVID. I think more of us will judge our employer by their all-round commitment to their labour force than actually by the salary we're offered at the point of recruitment. And I think more of us will work in companies and businesses because of the culture they offer us.
Okay, well, Pete Ashby, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Michael, very, very much.